On the morning of the 13th of September 1982, at around 9:54, a car comes off a mountain road in the hills above Monaco. The road is the RD-37. The twisting descent from the Grimaldi family's farm at Roc Agel down toward the Principality, a stretch of French tarmac stitched with hairpins, one of which is known locally as the Coude du Diable, the Devil's Elbow. The car is a Rover 3500, metallic green. There are two people inside it, and neither of them is wearing a seatbelt, because it is 1982 and almost nobody is. Coming into the bend, the car does not slow. It accelerates. A truck driver behind it watches the whole thing and can offer no explanation for what he is seeing. The Rover leaves the road and falls roughly 40 meters, call it 120 feet, the height of a 10-story building, and lands upside down in a garden below, on its roof among the vegetables, smoke coming off the engine. The woman at the wheel is 52 years old. She is unconscious, and she has been thrown backward into the rear of the car. The passenger is 17. She has just finished her baccalaureate. She is conscious. The entire passenger side of the Rover has been crushed against the mountain, which means there is exactly one usable exit in the vehicle, and it is the driver's door. A local flower farmer named Sesto Lecquio reaches the wreck first and pulls her out through it, bleeding, in shock, with a fractured neck she does not yet know about. That detail, which door she came out of, is about to become the most expensive fact of her life. The woman in the back is Grace Kelly, Princess Grace of Monaco. She will never regain consciousness. The teenager standing in the vegetable garden with a broken 7th cervical vertebra, 3 cracked ribs and a damaged collarbone is her youngest child, Princess Stéphanie, and within 72 hours, a substantial portion of the European press will have decided that she killed her mother. She did not. But she will spend the next 20 years being asked. If you only know the tabloid version of Stéphanie of Monaco, the wild child, the pop singer, the one who married a bodyguard and ran off with a circus. You have been sold about a third of her actual life, and you have been sold the least interesting third. This video argues something else. That almost every choice the press filed under, rebellion, reads differently once you put it back where it belongs, which is downstream of a car crash she survived and a rumor she couldn't outrun. So, was she driving? What did the French gendarmerie actually find? And why has almost nobody heard it? Why did an entire continent's newspapers treat a 17-year-old crash survivor with a broken neck as a suspect, rather than a casualty? And how does the girl who supposedly ran away to join the circus end up, 4 decades later, running Monaco's circus? One more thing before we start. When investigators reached the Rover, they found the automatic gearbox in park and the handbrake partially applied. Hold on to that. The gearbox and the handbrake. It will be 20 years before anyone hears the explanation, and when it arrives, it is worth the wait. Let's get into it. She was born on the 1st February 1965 at the Prince's Palace in Monaco, the third and last child of Prince Rainier III, then 41, and Grace Kelly, then 35. Caroline had arrived in 1957, Albert in 1958. Her godparents were her uncle John B. Kelly Jr. and Baroness Elizabeth Anne de Massey. She was, from her first day of life, Her Serene Highness Princess Stéphanie of Monaco, Countess of Polignac, that second title inherited through her father's line, and worth noting now because it becomes relevant later. It is a birth title, and no amount of scandal, divorce, or tabloid disapproval can take it away from her. The education was conventional for the family. The Dame de Saint-Maur in Monaco, then schooling in the Paris area, du Pont-Loup, the Cours Charles de Foucault, classical dance, piano, riding, swimming, skiing, and gymnastics, seriously enough that people reported in 1982 she had trained competitively. That last one matters more than it sounds. This is a childhood built around what a body can be made to do. And it will show up again in a circus tent in Switzerland 20 years from now. Two other details, both reported rather than documented, both attributed. J. Randy Taraborelli's 2003 book on the family records that she preferred to eat in the palace kitchens with the staff rather than in the dining room. And Geoffrey Robinson, in his 1989 biography of Rainier and Grace, records that her mother called her enfant terrible, affectionately, a tomboy label, and one that quietly did her no favors because it handed the press a ready-made contrast with her elder sister. Caroline was the polished one. Stéphanie was the other one. Nobody chose that. It simply set, like concrete, before she was old enough to object. By the summer of 1982, she had her baccalaureate and a plan to go into fashion. She was 17 years old, and for about 6 more weeks, she was an ordinary, rich European teenager with an unusual home address. Then came the 13th of September. Here is what the medical record says, because it is the part that got flattened almost immediately. Physicians treating Grace at the Princess Grace Hospital. Their statements carried by the New York Times on the 17th of September 1982 reported that she had suffered a cerebral vascular incident before the impact, a bleed in the brain at the wheel on a mountain descent. That is the documented mechanism for why a car accelerated into a bend instead of braking for it. A second hemorrhage followed the trauma of the crash itself. She was kept on life support while the family decided, and on the evening of the 14th of September, with Rainier, Caroline and Albert present, that support was withdrawn. She was declared dead at around 10:15 at night. Her youngest daughter was down the corridor in a neck brace and was not told that night. Now, the rumor. And this one gets the full treatment because it defined her. The version that went around the world goes like this. Stéphanie was pulled from the driver's side of the car. Stéphanie was 17, and the legal driving age in France was 18. The palace's first communiques were vague to the point of uselessness about who was hurt and how badly. Issued, it later emerged without full sign-off from the doctors and understating the severity. Fill those 3 facts into the obvious shape, and you get a headline. The underage daughter was at the wheel. The palace is covering it up, and Grace Kelly died because of it. Le Monde raised the who was driving question openly on the 17th September. AFP carried it. The British and French tabloids ran with it and never quite let go. It was still being recycled in books and documentaries decades later. The documented version goes like this. The French gendarmerie ran a real investigation out of the Menton Company, led by Captain Roger Bentzi, and Bentzi later walked biographers, including Bertrand Tessier, whose 2014 book on Grace was written with his cooperation and previously unpublished material from the file. Through what it found, a gendarme positively identified Grace at the wheel at a pedestrian crossing about 10 minutes before the crash. The truck driver behind them observed the car's path. There was nowhere on that road between the last sighting and the bend for two people to swap seats, and the passenger side of the Rover was crushed flat, which is why the surviving occupant came out of the driver's door. It was the only door left. Which version is correct? The second one, and not narrowly. This isn't a case of competing plausible readings. It's a case of a rumour built entirely out of one circumstantial detail, an exit door, against a reconstruction built out of eyewitness identification, vehicle damage, and a medical cause of death. And it is worth saying plainly what the investigation did not do. It never charged anyone. It never made a finding of criminal negligence against either woman in that car. There was no interrogation of Stéphanie as a suspect, no ordering closed of the file by the palace, and the persistent story that Grace's last words blamed her daughter has no primary source behind it whatsoever. It was invented, and it has been repeated for 40 years by people who found it more satisfying than what actually happened. Was there palace obstruction? Something less than that, probably. The early bulletins were chaotic, and they understated the injuries. That much is on the record. And it is precisely what let the speculation in the door. She left hospital in late September. UPI reported on the 27th that she had gone to continue her recovery at the palace, and that she was walking, which disposes of another myth while we're here. She was not paralyzed, not permanently broken, not confined to anything. She walked out. She did not, however, go to the funeral. Consider what that sentence actually contains. A 17-year-old with a fractured cervical vertebra, cracked ribs, and a damaged collarbone, discharged into a palace in the last week of September, while several million people watched her mother's funeral on television, and a good proportion of them had spent the previous fortnight reading that she was responsible for it. There is no documented record of what she said about it at the time, because she said nothing about it at the time. She said nothing about it for 7 years. Hold that number too. What she did instead was work. In 1983 and 1984, she took an internship at Christian Dior in Paris under Marc Bohan, the house's creative director, and not a man who handed out apprenticeships as charity. Then modelling, German Vogue, Vanity Fair. Hola! Then, in 1986, her own label. It was called Pool Position, a swimwear line she designed with Alex Delacombe, and the show was attended by her father, her sister and her brother, the reigning Prince of Monaco, and both his heirs, sitting in the audience at a swimsuit presentation, which tells you roughly everything about how seriously the family took her attempt to build a working life. The press took it differently. The press had already decided what she was, and a princess modelling asymmetric swimwear fitted the file. Then she made the file worse, and she did it deliberately. On the 1st of February 1986, her 21st birthday, a release date nobody chose by accident, she put out a single on the Carrère label called Ouragan, Hurricane, English version, Irresistible. It is a synth pop record of its exact moment, and it went to #1 in France and stayed there for 10 consecutive weeks. 10. Contemporary industry reporting put sales in the millions. Though those figures were claimed rather than audited, so treat them as the record industry's arithmetic rather than anyone's audited accounts. An album, Besoin, followed. For a stretch of 1986, she was, commercially, one of the biggest pop acts in Europe. Her father banned it from Monaco radio. That detail is reported by the Chicago Tribune in 1986. And it deserves a moment, because it is a genuinely extraordinary piece of family government. The sovereign of a state, exercising what amounts to a national playlist, veto against his own daughter's #1 record. Whatever else the Grimaldis were, they were never subtle. You may be wondering whether she enjoyed any of this. The documented behavior points one way. People reported in 1986 that while touring, she insisted on washing her own car and doing her own laundry. Specific, slightly absurd domestic details of someone actively resisting the machinery around her rather than luxuriating in it. And the career, at its commercial peak, did not continue. She has said since in an interview with Vogue Paris that the scale of the fame produced crippling stage fright, and that this is why she stopped. A woman builds an escape hatch out of pop music and finds she has installed a brighter spotlight in her own ceiling. Then, in 1989, two things happened. She launched a perfume, which is unremarkable, and she sat down with the biographer Geoffrey Robinson, whose book on Rhaenyra and Grace came out that year, and she talked about the crash for the first time in public. She was 24. What she described was not the accident. It was the pressure. Everyone saying she had been driving, that it was her fault that she had killed her mother. And then, plainly, it's not easy when you're 17 to live with that. That is the whole architecture of the thing in one sentence. Not a denial of a charge, because there was no charge. The gendarmerie never brought one. A denial of a rumour, 7 years after it started, by a woman who had been a child when it started, to a biographer, because there was no other venue in which to say it. No inquest to testify at, no court to be cleared in, just the accumulated sediment of headlines and one interview to argue against all of them. It did not work. Obviously, it did not work. Rumours that entertaining do not respond to correction. Her second album, Stéphanie, arrived in 1991 to a considerably cooler reception. And the music career effectively ended there, with one strange and rather wonderful footnote. That same year, she recorded uncredited vocals on Michael Jackson's In the Closet. Billed on the record only as the Mystery Girl, it is the single most 1991 sentence in this entire script, and it is true. And in 1992, she began a relationship with her bodyguard. Okay, we need to talk about Daniel Ducrouet, because everything from here runs through him. Ducrouet was a member of the Monégasque security apparatus, a man employed, as the New York Times noted when they married in 1995, precisely to stand between her and the photographers. Their son, Louis Robert Paul Ducrouet, was born in Monaco on the 26th of November 1992. Their daughter, Pauline Grace Magouille Ducrouet, followed on the 4th of May 1994. Neither parent was married to the other at the time. and in most European royal houses of the period, that sentence would have ended the discussion permanently. Monaco, it turns out, works differently, and the difference is worth 2 minutes, because it governs the rest of this family's story. Monaco's succession runs on male preference primogeniture among the legitimate descendants of the reigning prince and his siblings. That's the constitutional frame. But the operative machinery here isn't constitutional at all. It's in the Monegasque Civil Code, Articles 227 and 229, which provide for legitimation by subsequent marriage. Children born outside marriage acquire the same rights as children born within it if their parents later marry, provided the children have been recognized. Not a special dispensation, not a sovereign's favor, a civil code default available to any Monegasque, which in this instance happened to apply to 2 toddlers with a claim on a throne, which is why the date matters. On the 1st of July 1995, at the town hall in Monaco, Princess Stéphanie of Monaco, aged 30, married Daniel Ducrouet in a civil ceremony. There was no religious service. Her father refused one. Present in the building were the couple's 2 children, a boy of 2 and a girl of 1, and the legal effect on them was immediate and permanent the moment the marriage was registered. Louis and Pauline Ducrouet were legitimated. They were not merely acknowledged or provided for or quietly accommodated. They entered the line of succession to the throne of Monaco, and they are in it today. That is the part the tabloids never got right, then or since. The persistent line is that Stéphanie's children were the illegitimate embarrassments of the House of Grimaldi, permanently outside the family's real business. 2 of the 3 were inside it from the summer of 1994's paperwork onward, by operation of ordinary law, and remain there. So take the picture as it stood in the second week of July 1995. 30 years old, 2 children, a husband who had come from the security detail rather than the almanac of European nobility, which the press treated as a scandal and which reads now, at minimum, as a woman marrying the person she actually knew. A finished pop career, a finished fashion venture, a dead mother, and a rumor that had been following her for 13 years and showed no sign of tiring. For roughly 13 months, this was the settled shape of her life. Then a photographer with a telephoto lens went to work in a garden in Villefranche-sur-Mer, August 1996. A private villa above Villefranche-sur-Mer on the coast a few minutes' drive from Monaco. There is a pool. At the pool, there are 2 people. One is a Belgian model and cabaret performer named Feli Houtman, who had competed under a beauty pageant title the papers would repeat with enormous enthusiasm for the next several months. The other is a man employed for most of his adult life to keep photographers at a distance. He is 30 years old. He has been married for 13 months. He is the father of 2 children who are, as of that summer, 16th and 18th in line to the throne of Monaco. Somewhere in the foliage around that pool, behind a telephoto lens, someone is working. The pictures ran days later, across the covers of the Italian magazines Oggi and Gente, and from there, everywhere else. The Independent reported that the footage from that villa sold for around $300,000. $300,000 for a garden, a pool, and a man who did not check the tree line. His name is Daniel Ducrouet, and he was hired by the palace to protect Princess Stéphanie of Monaco from exactly this. The divorce was finalized on the 4th of October 1996. 13 months of marriage, 1 summer and a lens. Now, Ducrouet has always said there was more to it than a man behaving badly. And he is a living person with a right to his account, so here it is properly. The version the world received in August 1996 goes like this. A former bodyguard who had married far above his station repaid the family by being photographed with another woman at a villa while his wife was elsewhere. And the marriage ended because of what he did. That version comes from the pictures themselves, which nobody disputes exist, and from the timing of the divorce filing, which is a matter of public record. The version Ducrouet has advanced, repeatedly, including on Italian television as recently as 2025, goes like this. He was set up, trapped in his telling and drugged. The whole scene arranged so the photographs could be taken and sold, with him as the product rather than the participant. He is not alone in gesturing at orchestration. There were subsequent proceedings in Nice in which individuals connected to the photography were convicted of privacy offences, which establishes at minimum that the way those images were obtained was found to be unlawful. Which version is correct? Here we have to be careful, because this is a living man's reputation, and the honest answer is that the record supports only part of what he says. That the images were obtained illegally. That has been through a French court. That he was drugged or lured as part of a deliberate trap rather than simply caught doing something he chose to do. That rests, so far as the public record goes, on his own testimony given by an interested party, and there is no independent corroboration on the table. Some sources report the claim. Nobody has verified it, and it changes nothing about the outcome. Because the photographs ended a marriage, regardless of how they came to exist. What we do not know, and will not pretend to, is how she found out, or what she did in the hour afterwards. There is no documented account of that. There is only the filing. 2 years later, on the 15th of July 1998, Stéphanie had a third child, Camille Marie Kelly Gottlieb, born in Monaco. Her father is Jean-Raymond Gottlieb, whom Camille has publicly acknowledged. There was no marriage, and here the civil code cuts the other way. Legitimation under Articles 227 and 229 operates by the parents' subsequent marriage. No marriage, no legitimation. Camille has never been in the line of succession, and, contrary to a stubborn internet claim that she was quietly added later, never was placed in it afterward. She is not excluded because anyone excluded her. She is excluded because a legal mechanism has one trigger, and that trigger never occurred. Which brings us to the circus. Here, stated once, plainly, and then not again, is the pattern that organizes this entire life. Every major move Stéphanie of Monaco made after the age of 17 was a search for a place the cameras could not follow. And the tabloid press insisted on reading each attempt as rebellion, because rebellion sells better than grief. In 2001, she began a relationship with Franco Knie, an elephant trainer from the Swiss circus dynasty, and she did the thing that got filed as the most outrageous act of her career. She moved into his caravan with her children. The Guardian and the Telegraph both reported it at the time. A 45-foot trailer, a travelling circus, 3 children, and a princess of Monaco doing the cooking. Read the coverage from 2001, and it is almost entirely one note. She has finally lost it. Knee's own description, given to The Guardian that year, was rather different. He said she was very normal, very simple, that she liked to do the cooking and the cleaning, which is either a man defending his partner from a press pile-on or an accurate description of what somebody wanted after 36 years of being photographed. It can comfortably be both. Consider the physical facts of the arrangement, though, rather than the framing. A travelling circus does not stay anywhere. It has no fixed address for a photographer to stake out. Its people work with animals at unsociable hours in a closed community that is famously hostile to outsiders and famously indifferent to titles. If you set out to design the least surveillable life available in Western Europe to a woman with that surname, you would arrive at approximately a Knee caravan. And the woman who had trained as a competitive gymnast as a child in a household where the physical was the one thing genuinely hers, was not moving into an alien world. She was moving into the nearest available version of one she already understood. She was there for about a year. She and Knee separated in 2002. He remained with the family circus in Switzerland. She went back to Monaco. So the line about running away to join the circus forever. She did live with the circus, that much is true, and she took her children with her, and it was as strange as it sounds. But permanent abandonment of royal life it was not. It lasted a season, and it was in October 2002, back in Monaco, 20 years and 1 month after the crash, that she sat down with Paris Match and finally told the whole thing. She had denied driving in 1989. What she had never done was describe what happened inside the car. She said she was not driving and that this was clear. She described being thrown around inside the vehicle like a tennis ball, in her phrase, which is not the language of someone dramatizing. She described her mother losing control, and she described what she did about it. She tried everything. She said she even pulled on the handbrake. There it is. The thing I asked you to hold on to at the start, the automatic gearbox found in park, the handbrake found partially applied. For 20 years, those 2 details sat in a gendarmerie file and in the photographs of the wreck as inert forensic curiosities. The sort of thing an investigator notes and nobody outside the file ever explains. They are not curiosities. They are the physical residue of a 17-year-old in a car accelerating toward a bend on a mountain road, with her mother unconscious or losing consciousness at the wheel beside her, reaching across and grabbing at every control she could reach to make the car stop. That is what the park position is. That is what the handbrake is. It is not evidence that she was driving. It is evidence that she was trying to save both their lives in the last few seconds available. And the same wreck that recorded her attempt also handed the world the door she climbed out of. She was blamed for 20 years on the strength of a physical detail. The exonerating physical details were in the same car the whole time. 12 months later, she married again. And this one lasted barely longer than the paperwork. On the 12th September 2003, in Switzerland, she married Adans Lopez Perez, a Portuguese acrobat. The divorce came through on the 24th of November 2004. 14 months. There is no scandal attached to it, no photographer in the shrubbery, no court case. It simply ended. And the man went on with his life, and the press had one more entry for the file marked unsuitable. That marriage is where the tabloid biography of Stéphanie of Monaco effectively stops. There are no more husbands. There is no third act of chaos. What happens next is, by the standards of the coverage that preceded it, catastrophically boring. And it is also the part of her life that has now lasted more than 20 years, which is longer than the pop career, the fashion label, both marriages and the circus put together. She went to work on AIDS. The organization that became Fight AIDS Monaco grew out of an earlier association she had been involved with. And from the early 2000s onward, it became the fixed center of her public life. Fundraising galas, prevention campaigns, and direct advocacy. She was subsequently appointed a special representative for UNAIDS, which is not a ribbon-cutting title, but a working brief with the United Nations' own program. 2010, she opened Maison de Vie at Carpentras in southern France, a respite house for people living with HIV. Not a check, a building with residents in it. There is a specific kind of courage in the timing that is easy to miss now. Consider what it meant in the early 2000s for a member of a reigning European house. A Catholic principality, no less, to make HIV her permanent public identity. Royal patronage in that era ran to hospitals, orchestras, lifeboats, children's charities. It did not, as a rule, run at a disease still surrounded by stigma and moralizing. Diana had made the point famously and briefly. Stéphanie made it the work of 2 decades and counting. And the other institution she took on was the circus. In 2001, the press called her a woman who had thrown away her position to live in a caravan. Today, her most durable royal function is the presidency of the Monte-Carlo International Circus Festival, the event her father founded. The thing the Grimaldis are genuinely serious about, handed to the daughter who had been mocked for taking circus people seriously in the first place. She ran away to join the circus and discovered the circus was her actual inheritance. She was also by then the one at the bedside. Prince Rainier III died in 2005. In his final weeks, it was Stéphanie who kept the vigil, the youngest, the difficult one, the one whose #1 single he had banned from the national airwaves, while her brother and sister handled the machinery of a state changing hands. That is the documented behavior. Draw from it what you like. Behavior of that kind tends to argue for itself. Then the slow, unglamorous accumulation of a working life. In 2008, she guest-edited Vogue Paris and appeared on its cover, the fashion establishment. 22 years after pole position, deciding she had been worth taking seriously all along. The galas continued every summer. The circus festival continued every winter. Her daughter Pauline built a fashion label of her own in the 2020s called Alter. Alter, which is the same instinct her mother had at 21 and a considerably kinder press environment in which to have it. In October 2025, France named her an officer of the Legion of Honor. The following month, Monaco made her a commander of the Order of Cultural Merit. 2 states, 6 weeks apart. formally recording that the wild child had turned out to be a public servant. So where does that leave things as we speak? In the summer of 2026. She is 61 years old. She lives principally in the Monaco area. She is His Serene Highness's sister and Her Serene Highness Princess Stéphanie of Monaco, Countess of Polignac. The titles she was born with, never touched by any of it. And she stands 15th in line to the throne. Her public schedule has narrowed by choice. She has said she wants more privacy, while keeping the Fight Aids, galas, and the Circus Festival. Louis Ducrouet is alive, married, and the father of 2 daughters, Victoire, born April 2023, and Constance, born December 2024. Both girls are in the succession 17th and 18th because of a civil ceremony at a town hall in 1995. Pauline is 19th. Camille Gottlieb is outside the line and busy inside Monégasque, charitable and cultural life anyway. Albert and Caroline are alive and working. Daniel Ducrit is alive, remarried, and still telling his version. There are no open legal matters involving any of them. Now the verdict, and it has to be double-edged, because she is not a saint, and this is not a rehabilitation video. The case against her, as the press made it, was that she was reckless with her position. That she treated a Serene Highness as a costume to be dropped whenever it got tight. That she made choices in public that a more disciplined person would have made in private or not at all. And that the swimwear, the synth pop, the bodyguard and the caravan were the behavior of someone who never grew up. Some of that is fair. Her judgment about who to marry was on the evidence of 2 divorces in 8 years, not good. Her attempts to build a separate identity were repeatedly ill-advised in ways that handed her critics exactly the ammunition they wanted. The case for her is that she was 17 years old in a car that fell 120 feet, that she came out of it with a broken neck and a dead mother, and that a large section of the European press then spent 2 decades implying she had caused it. An accusation that no investigation ever made, that a gendarmerie reconstruction refuted, and that no court, coroner, or official body ever put to her, because there was nothing to put. She had no forum in which to be cleared. She had only interviews, 7 years apart, and then 13 years after that, and a rumour that outran every correction, because it was better entertainment than the truth. And the gravest charge, the one that was never a charge, only a suggestion, printed and reprinted from Le Monde in September 1982 outward, collapses on the physical evidence. Grace Kelly was identified at the wheel 10 minutes before the bend by a gendarme. The medical evidence, reported by her own physicians, was a cerebral vascular incident at the wheel. The passenger side was crushed. The handbrake was pulled. 2 ironies then, plainly. The man hired to shield her from the cameras is the man who handed them their most profitable photographs. And the door she was pulled out of alive is the same door they used to convict her. Which leaves the picture I want to end on. And it is not a palace balcony. Some years ago, 2 Asian elephants named Baby and Nepal, held in Lyon and suspected of carrying tuberculosis, were scheduled to be put down. Stéphanie intervened, and the animals were moved to Rock Agile, the family's working farm in the hills, the 140-acre property she was driving down from on the morning of the 13th of September 1982. She has been photographed there since, in mud-stained boots, hauling hay. That is the whole life in one image. The road that took her mother runs down from that farm. She goes back up it and feeds elephants nobody else wanted, on the one patch of ground above Monte-Carlo where no lens can reach her. Peace is only found where the flashbulbs cannot reach. Thanks for watching, and for staying with a story that most people think they already know. If there's a life you want pulled apart properly, put the name in the comments. I read them. Grace Kelly is already in the queue, and so is Daniel Ducrouet, who has quite a lot more to say about 1996 than we had room for here. Until then, be skeptical of anything that makes too good a headline.